is Rebecca, and this is my channel, Grow to Gather. And it's finally the month of July here, and if you haven't been following along, it's been a bit unseasonably cold and rainy for a lot of the growing season here, but it's finally starting to warm up and get a little bit less rainy. But I just wanted to show you how things have been changing in my garden and how far things have come. It's really starting to turn a corner and things are finally starting to take off. But I'm gonna go ahead and show you around and show you what has changed and what's going on. So this here is part of one of my raised beds. There's quite a lot going on. There's some green beans that I planted here. There's some eggplant that's finally starting to take off. If you saw my last video, I kind of planted it a little bit in a poor spot. It's kind of hidden by the peas, but it's getting some sun now and it's starting to look a lot better. And then behind me I have some arugula that's going to seed, and there's also a few radishes mixed in there. Sometimes I do try to leave stuff go to seed just to try to let the seeds later on. And so this is the other half of that raised bed, and as you can see there's some peas here. I'm going to be collecting the seeds from those. I'm just letting them dry out, and then I am going to be harvesting those seeds pretty soon. There's also a cucumber back here. I'm going to be planting more cucumbers along here. It's really great to plant cucumbers in succession all summer long, just because you'll be able to keep them coming, and whenever one dies off it's really not worth trying to save. But if you have another cucumber that's planted a few weeks later, then you can just keep on going and going and going and having cucumbers all summer long. So I'm going to be planting more of those in the next few days. There's also a Malabar spinach back there that's also going to be growing up this trellis. And then there's a few beets back there, some carrots that are looking pretty good, a few kale. They have been had a little bit by the cabbage worms, but I do harvest from them and give the leaves to the chickens, so I'm leaving those go for right now because the chickens do quite enjoy those. And then I also have some garlic here. It is pretty ready to harvest, but it's been very rainy here, and I'm kind of trying to avoid taking it out until we have a nice dry day, just so that those bulbs will preserve just a little bit better. Now this bed right here is mainly zucchini, peppers, and tomatoes. This zucchini is starting to really take off. It's looking really big, and there's a few on there that are doing really good. And then these peppers are also starting to take off. We are starting to get some of the hotter weather, and we did have like 1 week where we had near 100-degree temperatures. It was kind of very hot for this area, but they did really like it, and I've had to stake a few up just because they got so big. I probably need to stake up another couple of them, but I have some cayenne coming. I have lots of Jimmy Nardillos coming. This plant probably has the most fruits out of any of my pepper plants currently that I've noticed. There's a lemon drop pepper back there. This pepper's also quite large. I believe that's an ancho pepper. Then I do have some tomatoes in here. They are starting to also set fruit, which I'm very excited about. But they are also growing and getting a lot bigger. There's also some parsley in these beds. I have it growing in this one and this one. I like to really interplant herbs just because I feel like it helps deter pests a bit, and this plant has really been taking off. I've cut some of this and taken it inside and frozen it, been using it in cooking, and probably need to cut it back again and freeze more. It freezes really well with just a little bit of olive oil mixed in it, and then if you put in a freezer bag, you can really save it very easily. And then there's also a nasturtium in here. It's showing a little bit of pest damage, but they are a great trap crop, so I try to put those a few places, because if the pests go after the nasturtium, then they're not going after my other plants. And there's some onions in here I'm saving for seed. They are biennials, and if you leave them in your garden from one year to the next, the second year they will do this. They're kind of cool flowers, but they will set seed, and probably in about a month or so I'll be able to save these seeds. There's a lot of basil in here. This is a lettuce leaf basil. These leaves will get huge, honestly bigger than this once this grows up, and they're good for wraps and stuff. It does look slightly rough at the moment, but hopefully the new growth will look better. This is a lemon basil. The leaves smell a little bit lemony. This is a Thai basil. This one's my favorite probably, but the leaves smell like almost licoricey, but it's very good in water and that sort of deal, and good for cooking as well. And then this is just a Genovese basil. There's also some lettuce back here that is bolted a little bit, and lots of cilantro that is bolted, and it has these little white flowers that the bees seem to really like. And these, and once cilantro is bolted, it will produce a spice called coriander, and I should actually grind these up for that or use those for seeds. And then this bed is my strawberries and dill. The strawberries have started filling out a little bit more, but I do need to go through and take out some of these diseased ones just because you don't really want those. But they're coming in pretty nicely. I do have a few leeks in here as well that are starting to take off. So now I'm going to take you around my in-ground garden, and it has made quite a bit of progress. I've had this garden for about 3 years, and every year I add a little bit more. So the section that you see closer to me is the newer part. A little bit further back is a part that was added 2 years ago. Then even further back is the newer section. So every year I try to add a little bit, and you can see closer to me the soil's a little bit better. Then further back it's a little bit worse, and then further back than that is the worst of the soil. Didn't really tell how you did into it, but making progress and always adding and trying new things. But I have a lot of flowers in this section. They are a little bit further behind this year than what they normally are because of the weather, but they're starting to fill out and look quite a bit better. In this section, I do have a few cucumbers kind of randomly planted back here, but they're growing up onto my fence. If you have a fence around your garden, it sometimes is really nice because you can use that as kind of an extra trellis without having to buy anything additional. And then this section beside me and behind me, I do have some of my brassicas. There are a few scattered throughout the garden, but there's a lot over here. There's some cabbage right beside me. And then I have some broccoli behind me. It does still have a few small heads that I do need to harvest, but I am honestly gonna probably take it out pretty soon just because it's so hot. As you can see, some of it is really starting to bolt and just not really getting a lot out of it. I may put a cover crop here temporarily, like maybe buckwheat, and I'm gonna be just kind of giving the soil a little bit of a break, and then probably putting out more of my fall crops that I have planted inside out here once that's done. And then right beside me here is some celery, and this is the first time I've actually grown celery. Whenever I first started this garden, I had a little bit less space, and I really concentrated on the tomatoes and the peppers, but now that I have a little bit more, I am trying to grow things like celery just because it is a longer maturity crop, and I just wanted to kind of experiment with it this year. But one of them is looking a little bit bad in the back, but most of them are looking pretty good and excited to try it. I also have some fennel here that has bolted quite a bit just in the past day or two because that was not there before, but it's very hot out some days. And then more peppers here. These are banana peppers, I believe, in here. These are jalapenos growing on this plant. I have so many jalapenos in the garden, I will just keep on buying. I had some planted from seed, probably about I want to say 8 15 or so, but then with how rough the early season was, I kept on buying jalapeno plants because I was worried I wasn't going to have any. So I'm very relieved to see these. I will freeze a lot of them, make a lot of cowboy candy, so I'm hoping to get quite a lot more of these because I love them. And then this here is, I believe, a butternut squash, but it is getting pretty big. I'm trying to use the fence to trap it, but it does have some little squashes on it, and very excited for this one as well. I love using like butternut squash in like fall salads, and it's growing pretty well now. That was a spaghetti squash. This one next to me, the smaller, is a butternut. But excited for the spaghetti squash too. Excited for all of them. Then I also have some okra seedlings here. I have 3 of them this year. I probably need to thin them out a little bit. They get huge and definitely to not have multiple next to each other. But I'm just trying to take the better looking ones and thin them. But they grow really well here in the north, even if you think they're a traditionally sovereign plant. You do want to plant them though whenever it's pretty hot out, just because they don't do well with the cold at all, which is why I had trouble with them earlier this year. But have some now, and hopefully we'll be in some okra soon. Then this here is the newer section of the garden that I mentioned earlier, where the soil's not quite as good, but there's some asparagus back here. This is kind of the boundary of the newer section last year. These were cauliflower. I don't believe they're gonna really do anything just because it's so hot, but I'll probably be taking those out soon. And then there's a few melons here. Then I also have some potatoes in this section and a few flowers mixed in, like this big sunflower. Then I'm also trying to grow some more squash up here. I believe this is an acorn squash here. There's a weeby little pumpkin right next to it. They're pretty good if you don't have a huge space. They maybe get around like 3 to 4 feet in diameter, but if you don't have a large space for growing pumpkins, they are a good variety because they will produce some little ones the kids get very excited about, but they're not a huge plant. Then this is a mini harvest pumpkin a little bit further along, and an early acorn squash, and there are some onions planted back here with more asparagus behind them. There are also a few strawberries that I added this year that are planted in, and these are an ever-bearing variety. I don't know how I like them. The store just had them labeled as ever-bearing, so I don't know that exact variety, but they are very, very small strawberries, but I have been getting them pretty consistently, which is kind of nice. This is a patty pan squash right here. It's starting to get a little bit bigger, and that is a yellow crooknut. Last year my yellow crooknut was huge, but this one kind of looks a little bit sickly, and I don't know if it's gonna do too much. And this is my main section of onions. Some of these are pretty large. I could actually be taking them out and using them for my everyday cooking right now. You don't want to take them until they're ready. If they are going to be drying them out and preserving them whenever like the stem will completely die back and fall over. But if I just wanted to use them for just like dinner, that would be fine. And then these onions that are smaller were grown from onion sets. They don't tend to get quite as big or make as big of a bulb for storage. And these back ones that are quite a bit bigger were grown from seed that I started in January actually. But you can definitely see the difference, even though I guess they were planted at different times too, to be fair. And this is my oregano. It is 1 year old, but it is huge. I think you can usually keep them about 2 or 3 years before you should maybe get a new one, just because they do get a bit woody. But it is starting to flower a little bit and probably does need to back it in soon. I already got pretty much a full mason jar of just oregano seasoning that I dehydrated just from this plant. So if you're looking for a good bang for your buck, an oregano plant is a great investment. It'll give you full jars of seasoning for years. And these are my tomatillos. They are growing quite nicely, I believe. It's also my first year for them, but lots of flowers and hopefully lots of fruit soon. And these two rows are mostly my pride and joy, my tomatoes. They are my favorite thing to grow, and I'm always very excited for the first tomatoes every year. And this year it was the sun gold. I have this plant and one in the raised bed, but I've already drawn a few of those, but hoping for many more. But these are my Romas, and they are a determinate tomato. Quite a lot of fruit that's appeared very recently. They didn't look like this last week, but they're looking quite a bit better, and hopefully I will be getting a lot from them soon. Made lots of sauce. Lots of fruit set on some of these others. Like this is a Brandywine Pink, also a good tasting tomato. These are some San Marzanos, also great fruit set this year. I have a few that are ripening back here, which is very, very exciting. I probably am gonna, this one is almost ripe, but I probably will be saving some seeds from this plant in particular. It's not very big, but really early maturing. Typically I don't get big tomatoes like even this size until a few weeks later in the season. But if you want to save seeds from these, it's very easy. I probably will be saving seeds from this plant in particular. So this section right here also does not really look like much. I have a few cucumbers that I have growing here. And I do actually see one on there, which I did not see yesterday somehow, but picking that one soon. And I'm going to be planting peas here within the next week or two. If you watched my video about July seed starting, mid-July is a great time to be trying to start your pea seeds for fall. So those will be going in on the other side of this. So that is it for my main garden. So now I just want to take you around and show you a few other spots. These are my blackberries, and they actually are looking very good. They're also new this year. I'm trying to add more perennial fruit around my yard just because I think it's a lot easier to have something that you can kind of plant and just have, but it's a little bit challenging because my yard is fairly wet and I don't want to put raised beds absolutely everywhere or pots absolutely everywhere. But these blackberries are really doing well in the soil, and I may try to add more of those and more raspberries in the next few years. This here is my fig tree. I planted it in a pot this year just because I wanted to see how it would do before I moved it. And my soil is a little bit finicky here, so I thought this might help it get some more growth. But I did have it in a sunnier spot earlier this year and it didn't do quite as well, but I moved it into this spot where it gets a little bit of shade a few hours every day, and it's growing quite well now and looks very healthy. And these are my herb pots. I don't really have an herb garden per se, but I do like to keep a few next to the kitchen, so they're right outside. But this one has thyme, rosemary, and sage. The sage goes very well in this spot. It's very sunny. I think next year I may try to put rosemary in its own pot just because I think it's kind of getting overpowered a little bit in this one, but they are growing pretty well for the most part. And I did just want to give a quick update on my seedlings as well that I started last week, but they're doing very well. I've had maybe one or two that haven't came up, but very happy with how they're doing. And they're growing very well, so I can put them out in fall to replace some of those things I'm taking out. So that is it for today. Thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe for more gardening and preserving, and like and subscribe for more gardening and preserving content. Thank you. Bye.